Hello, my name is Andrew Hochradel, and during this challenge, I'm going to make a bold promise that we will get through every single effect available in Illustrator. We're just going to go all the way down the list. So if you've never joined us before, these creative challenges usually have a takeaway. We make a flyer, we make some kind of asset to deliver. We're not doing that today. I am giving you strict knowledge, and we're going to walk through every single thing that is in the effects panel in Adobe Illustrator. If you want to follow along, you can grab the source file down in the link. That is the place that we are working, and that source file looks just like this. So grab that source file, join me on this journey, and we are going to go through all of the effects to understand what they do and how you can use them, right? So it's not going to be one thing. We are going to go through all of them, and I'm going to try to give you use cases so that you can understand a little better. If you're watching the replay, you can skip through the chapters and find the effect that you're looking for or is relevant to you or you're confused about. So let's go ahead and hop in. If you are watching the live stream and not the replay, you can ask questions over in chat. And we have our first one. Clarissa asks, Andrew, do you lock your layers as you go along? Never. I almost never lock my layers. I like to be able to use everything. All right, so bold promise, indeed, yes, let's go. Discover the best effects to use in your designs and illustrations. Understand how to use effects, how each effect changes your design, and how to combine them for maximum impact. Yes. And there is a survey down here for you to join an insider community with Adobe Illustrator. If you want to, read that on your own time. Let's hop in. So the first one, I'm just going to click through each of these circles and show you what they do. Today, we will only be in the effects panel up here on the left, and we're going to make our way through, and I'm just going to explain it to you. So there's going to be a ton of 3D that we can get into, but we're just going to kind of graze the surface today. If you want to, you can join us February 13th. We will be having a 3D boot camp here on Adobe Live. You'll be able to find out everything you need about 3D. So effects and materials, this is going to give you all of your 3D. So if you click on Extrude and Bevel, that's kind of just the place to get started, and it's going to bring up the 3D menu. In that 3D menu, there are so many different settings that you can work with. But if you're looking to make 3D objects, you can play around here, really make some awesome and fun 3D objects. You can add in materials by going to this panel and make something really crazy and really cool with some textures. That's a banana skin texture. And so this is a very deep dive. If you want to learn more about this effect, there are a lot of challenges, a lot of content here on Adobe Live. If you just type in Adobe Live, how to use 3D in Illustrator, I have a ton of content that can help you. But because this is so deep, we're just gonna do a quick little touch point on the 3D as an effect and then move right along. There's so much to explore here. We could do 9 lessons on this, but that is effect number 1. We got a whole bunch more to do. All right, so the next one is a little bit of a unique one that I don't use very often, but we can use it, and I want to show you what it does. So it is effect, and it is convert to shape. So convert to shape is a tool that allows you to take one shape and just make it another shape. So if we wanted to, we could go to convert to rectangle, and that's going to take this circle and convert it to a rectangle. Right now it's a square because it is a perfect rectangle. Now, the only way that I like to use this is maybe I'm using a shape to fill a space, and then I actually need to fill that space with a different shape. And so I'll convert it and set these to 0. So now this circle just rounds out these edges to become sharpens out these edges to become a square. We also can do a rounded rectangle and change the corner radius here. So this is nice if you're working with app icons, or even if you're working with a social media shape that needs to go to an app icon. You can keep the same circle social media avatar and then convert the shape into that rounded rectangle to create, boom, a little social media avatar. And the cool thing is this is still a live shape. So if I squish it, it is going to squish down to that shape, and it is going to keep our circle intact, but it is applying an effect to that circle to keep those edges rounded and to keep it as a rectangle. So it's basically taking one shape, making another shape, and keeping to convert it to that other shape, right? So it's a little complex, but I do love it. If you ever need to change an effect that you are working with, you can click right here on that effect, whatever is applied in the appearance panel, and you can click that and it will allow you to change this. So maybe we want it to be an ellipse. Now it's just going to make it a bigger circle. This is also a great way to kind of give some blobbiness to some things. I believe, let's do it with a complex shape and grab one of these letters. This might get crazy. So with a very complex shape, let's see what it does. We can go to Effect, we can go to Convert to Shape, and let's convert it to a ellipse. And what I think it's going to do is hit the highest, lowest, leftist, and rightist points and just convert it into a oval. So let's see what happens. Yep, exactly what I thought. So it just converts that into an oval and is hitting all of the edges of whatever that shape is. So even with complex things, right there, you can put it in there. And yes, it was a squircle, a square circle. I actually have a secret way to create squircles. I'll show you if we have time. All right, actually, I'll show you because we're going to go through effects. We're going to hit it. I'll show you how to make a squircle. All right, continuing on. Our next effect is going to be going to the effect panel and going over here to crop marks. You'll probably never use this, honestly. So we can click to give crop marks, and what that's going to do is just align to whatever shape you have selected. So these crop marks are not editable, but as you move the shape, it will keep those crop marks along those edges. Usually I just use rulers, but if maybe you're creating something for a printer that has multiple pieces on the page that need to get laser cut or die cut or something, you can very simply just grab whatever that shape is, so even a complex shape here, and go to Effect, Crop Marks, and it will give you crop marks for whatever that shape is. This can be helpful for laying out type, but really it is if you're putting multiple things on a page. It's really easy to be able to add those crop marks for your printers. A lot of you that are just starting out in Illustrator and just starting, you don't need to know about that. But as you move on, maybe you'll come back to it and you'll need some crop marks and you'll be like, you know what? I watched that creative challenge about effects and I learned about crop marks. All right, the next one, let me just make sure we're gauging on time. Okay, we're doing good. The next one is going to be Distort and Transform. And Andrew, we have 7 to go through. Yeah, we have 7 to go through here. So the first is going to be Free Distort. And Free Distort is very complex. So Free Distort, you're able to just grab these anchor points, and this is great for creating perspective, or just creating some really weird wonky letters. This is a great way. Usually if I'm creating perspective, I do it a little bit of a different way, but I create perspective with rectangles, not complex shapes. So if you're working with a complex shape, Free Distort is kind of the best way to create some really good perspective on your design. So I'm just going to pull these in here, and you can see now we've got kind of this perspective that's pulling it down onto the table. So you can create some very fun and unique shapes for logos, for branding. I love using this for organic shapes for branding. Is you can come in here, you can grab a very simple shape and then change that Free Distort. And maybe you need like a custom icon, right? You can kind of click and drag, and this is great for creating, like, I like to call them corporate blobs, right? You're creating a background to create these kind of blobs and abstract shapes. It's a really good effect to do that. A lot of abstraction. All right, continuing on. Our next effect that we are going to look at. We're going to go to the effects panel with our object selected, and we are going to go to Distort and Transform, and then go to Pucker and Bloat. So basically what this is going to do is it is going to pump air into or out of the shape, and it's going from anchor point to anchor point. So as I bloat, you can see that it's pumping air into those anchor points. So think of the anchor points kind of as the stitches in your balloon, and it is pushing out right on that balloon. So it feels like maybe there's a post here, there's a post on each anchor point, and you're blowing up a balloon and it's squeezing past those points, which are the anchor points. If you go back and do pucker, what it's going to do is it is going to push in those anchor points and then sharpen on the anchor points and push in on the non-anchor points. So this is fantastic for creating stars. Using pucker and bloat is literally the best thing that you can do for creating stars. Super easy. All right, so we're gonna hit okay because I like that star. I think it's a fun effect. So that is the pucker and bloat effect. It's really great if you're trying to make abstract letters. Pucker and bloat can get really crazy going to distort and transform. Pucker and bloat, and then you can get really wild with some of these and create, boom, some really cool effects that feel very custom, but are literally just typography with pucker and bloat applied to them. So really crazy and really fun. So basic shapes, again, you can round these. It will give you an extra little thing. I love that. It's very like Dungeons and Dragons. So you can play around with these effects and see what they do, but understanding pucker and bloat is basically making every anchor point swoop in if you're using pucker and then swoop out if you're using bloat, right? So think of it as a balloon and you're just putting posts around that balloon as it inflates. Continuing on. Whew. Here we go. We're blazing through today. We got 15 minutes. We got plenty of time. So with our next shape, we are going to use the effect, go to Distort and Transform, and go to Roughen. Of things in Illustrator, Roughen is my favorite effect. And I'm going to zoom in here so we can really see. So we're going to select our shape and then go to Effect and Distort and Transform, click on Roughen. Clicking on Roughen is going to randomly squiggle in between each anchor point. And the options that we have here will help dictate how much squiggliness we have on our object. So the size is going to be how far it deviates from the path. So usually when I use this, I want it to be very subtle. So I'll set it to maybe 1%, right? To just give me that little rough edge. Now the detail is how many times it goes up and down per inch. Right? So it's doing basically rides per inch, which we'll talk about when we look at Zig Zag. But if we take this down to maybe 2, you can see that it's only doing 1, 2 in between those anchor points, right? So I usually put this pretty high at like 20, and then we're going to change to smooth. And instead of those sharp edges, it's going to give us a really smoothed out look. And we might even take this down to like 0.5, right? A little bit less. So this is fantastic to use if you want that stamped look, if you want that custom texture, if you're looking on creating maybe something that is typography that wants to look vintage, wants to look like a custom printed piece, you can grab your typography, distort and transform, go to Roughen, and then just set those maybe 0.4, and then set this to maybe 50. So you want this one low, this one high. Always use smooth. I never use corner, and hit OK. And look at that. We've got this nice little pressed ink bleeding S that looks very vintage and very cool. I still think this is in style. It used to be in style a little bit more, but I think that it is still on trend. And it's just a great tool to use to make your sharp illustrations look a little more hand done, right? They look a little more vintage. And someone in the live chat is saying a brush would make a cool fur effect. Yes, absolutely. All right, moving on. Our next shape is selected. So to apply our next effect, we are going to go to Effects, Distort and Transform, and then go to Transform. This is the grandfather of all transform effects. And this is just the place that you can move things around. You can transform and edit the shape that you have selected. So you can do scale, you can do move, you can do rotation, you can do everything in here all at one time. So usually what I do is if I want this to be 60%, if you type in 60, it's going to squish it by 60%. This is a fantastic tool to use for bar charts. So if you are creating a bar graph, right, and you have maybe 2 of these things that are in a bar graph, and maybe this year was 60% less than this year, check this out. All you need to do is select this, go to Effects, Distort and Transform, Transform, and then change the scale of the horizontal to 60. And look at that. That is 60%. So all we need to do is set right here to where it was scaled to the left, right? This is aligning which area we want that to scale to, the right, the left, the top, the bottom. So we align it to the left and hit OK, and boom. Now, this year is 60% less exactly of this year. And the greatest thing about using this kind of thing for a bar chart is you can go in and say, oh no, it was 65% or 75%. You can select your shape, go to transform and type in 75 and boom, look at that. Super easy, Super, super easy. So there are some other options that you can do in there. Grabbing the effects tool with your shape, go to Distort and Transform, and we can do all the things from scaling it down evenly to maybe moving it by 20 pixels. This is great for using shadows if you want to move something down 20 pixels. We can rotate by a certain angle. It's not going to show it because it's a circle, but you can rotate as much as you want here. You also could transform the object only, the pattern only, or the strokes and effects. So you can set all these to stay the same or to change. And then also, if you have a bunch of shapes, you can click on random. So I'll show you that real quick. If we have a bunch of shapes, right, we select a lot of objects, you can go to Effect, Distort and Transform, and then you can click on Random, and you can set the minimum size. So maybe 30%, and then it should, Andrew, what are we doing here? Oh, there's a way to randomize it. I'm so sorry, I don't know how. Oh no. Oh, I've done this so many times and I don't know what's going on. There is a way to randomize this, and it will randomize the size of each of these objects. Oh man, I do feel like it's working. All right, there is a way to do it, I promise. So randomizing that will randomize all the different shapes. I don't know why it's working, but it does. All right, continuing on, we don't have time to get hung up. I'll find an answer for you and put it in our Discord. Next is the tweak tool. And the tweak tool, I'm gonna be honest with you, all of the research I've done, everything that I've tried with this, I don't understand how it works. I don't know what you use it for. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you. So you can grab your shape, go to Effect, go to Distort and Transform, and then go to Tweak. So it's gonna give you all of these options of different percentages to tweak it. I don't know how it's tweaking it. I don't understand this tool at all. And that's why I love learning with you. If you know how to use the tweak tool, tell me in Discord, put it in the comments. I've done so much research. I don't understand it. I need to talk to the Illustrator project managers. So we are going to tweak it by 50 and 50. I would use this just to create some abstract shapes. You can have it just do the in points of your paths or just do the out points of your paths. And then you also can have it aligned to the path or to the anchor point. So it's going to create abstract shapes. That's all I can tell you about that tool. I said I'm going to cover them all. I don't know how it works, but we're going to cover them all. All right, so we're going to Distort and Transform. Again, we're going to go to Twist, and Twist is one of my favorite tools. I'm going to sneeze. All right, so Twist is one of my favorite tools, and we're actually going to use this on a square just because it will show a little bit more. We are going to create a square and then go to Effect, Distort and Transform, and go to Twist. And what Twist is going to do is you can set how much of a twist that you want. So maybe I want 180 degrees. It is going to twist that shape 180 degrees, right? It will keep the anchor points where they are, but then it will twist everything else, right? So it's twisting between those paths. So we have the anchor points locked in, and then it's twisting between the paths. So maybe we want to set this to 360 for a full spin. It's great to create complex shapes. What I use this for the most is to create, you guys are going to love this, is to create something during the holidays that is a peppermint. I'm just going to do this real quick. You don't need to know how to do this. So we are going to create a little circle there, and then I'll select all of these. And what I do is I use the Distort and Transform, use that Twist tool, set it to 360. Hold on, I need to make this a compound path. There we go. I use the Effect tool to go to Twist. I set it to 360, and then I create a nice little spiral. So that's really fun to use the Twist tool to create this kind of stuff, peppermint candies, optical illusions, or make something that's a little more abstract. I love that one. Time check, 5 minutes. We got so many things to get through. So the next effect we are going to do, we are going to select our shape, and we are going to go to Zig Zag. So Zig Zag's actually better with a line. So we have our line, and this is the best way to make squiggly. So you can go to Effect, Distort and Transform, and Zig Zag. And Zig Zag right here is going to just make a perfect zigzag. You can change the size of how high it goes, or the amount of up and downs per segment. If you're trying to make waves, you can actually choose smooth, and it will smooth that out to make some really nice wavelengths. This is awesome for creating maybe a texture or some kind of wavy pattern. So Zig Zag takes your path and just puts ups and downs on that line. All right, continuing on, we are out of Distort and Transform. Path is going to give you a couple options here. Offset path is just going to offset that path. Really easy. We've talked about this before. Offset path just expands all of the anchor points by the amount of pixels that you have. So path, offset path, I want it to move out by 30. I hit OK. It's moved every anchor point by 30 pixels. Easy. All right, the next one, effects. Let's go to path. Outline object is just turn it into outlines. Outline stroke is going to be turning the stroke into a shape. Pathfinder. These are all different tools to allow you to combine, to change, to subtract objects. You can go through each and every one of these and see what they do because they all do something different. And I'd rather have you learn by kind of experimenting with them. So just overlap two shapes, any two shapes, select both shapes, and then come into that Pathfinder in Effects, Pathfinder, and start clicking through these to see what they do. So add is going to pull them together, Andrew. Oh, I'm so sorry. Add is going to be different. So what we want is we want to use merge. So merge is going to bring them together. Andrew. I don't know what's happening, y'all. Effects, Pathfinder. You can play around with these. I'll come back to them. I don't have time. Oh no, I overpromised. So you can go to Window if you want to and just open the Pathfinder tool and just use it here. Ignore the one in the effects. Just use it here. It's much easier. You can just click on these buttons and it will show you what the Pathfinder does. All right, the next one, we're going to select our object. We're going to go to Effect, and the next one is Rasterize. And Rasterize is basically going to take it from vector to pixel. So when I click on Rasterize, you have all kinds of options here, and you can rasterize it down to a pixel image. You almost never should use this in Illustrator because when we zoom in now, it's going to give us those weird and wonky pixels because it is no longer vector. It has been converted to just pixels. So this is not something that I like to use, but there are times that you want to use rasterize to make sure something is becoming pixels instead of vectors. 3 minutes. All right. The next one, effect, we have stylize. There are so many of these. So drop shadow is going to do just that. It's going to give you a drop shadow on your object. We're blazing. Effects, stylize. Feather is going to give you a nice blur around the edge, but it's not going to blur it out. It's going to blur it in. So a little bit different from just using a blur. It's going to blur that in and soften the edge for you on that shape. With the shape selected, going to Effect, we can go to Stylize. We can do an inner or outer glow. These two are just going to give us a glow. So you can use a color, and it will give you a little bit of that color kind of glowing on the inside. This is great for creating dimension, and the outer glow is going to do the same thing. It's going to push to the outside. Effect Stylize, we've got round corners, and round corners is going to make it so that we make a nice little squircle. So Effect Stylize, round corners. You can just set how much roundness you want, and it will round out that shape for you while keeping that shape intact. And what's cool is if you scale this, it's going to keep those corners rounded for you at those same angles. So great effect to use. The next one I'm going to use over here. We're going to select this and go to Effects. We are going to go to Stylize and click on Scribble. So clicking on Scribble, this is fantastic for creating like a stitched effect. It's going to take all of your colors and make a nice scribble across. So this is fantastic for creating a stitched effect. There are all kinds of different tools that you can use here. You can use the arrow keys to go up and down. It will change the density. You can change the width, right? So maybe I want this to be a little less, and maybe I want the spacing to be a little bit closer. And you can play around with how much scribble you want, and hitting OK, you can see I have this really nice kind of stitched effect. It's awesome to use for trying to create a scribble or just create some texture on your design. These are all paths. They are not outlines. They're not strokes. They are all full paths that now have this effect applied to create a really, really cool stitched look. All right. I think that we've almost made it through all the effects. I deliver on my promises. We select this, effects, SVG filters. You don't need to worry about these at all. I've been using Illustrator for a long time. I've never used these. If you want to play around with this, you can. I've literally never used these. So I can't show you, but I'm not going to. And the last thing that we have with 1 minute is warp. Warp is basically just going to augment your shape. So going to effect, warp, pick any of these and kind of play around with it. The one I'm going to show you is flag. So if you have a long shape like this or even typography, actually let's use our type down here. Even typography, we can select all of this, go to effect, warp, and then I'm going to choose flag. And it will give you an option to wave, right? It's going to warp and change whatever you have selected. So we can do arc upper. It's going to do this high one. And you can just click through here and find one that looks good for you, that looks fun for whatever you're playing around with. So it's going to augment that type, augment that shape. And there are all kinds of warping options, but it does still keep that shape intact so you can play around with it. We made it. I can't believe that we made it, but we made it all the way through the effects panel. I know I skipped some things, but like, let's pretend I didn't. They were like semi-important things. I was trying to show you the things that I use and how you can understand them. So your homework, go make something using these effects. Play around, find your favorite effect and apply it to a design. And let me know what that effect is. Roughen, pucker, bloat, if you're using any kind of crop marks maybe. Play around with those effects, find the one that's your favorite, and understand how they work together. That's why I wanted to show you everything. So thank you for joining me. We'll be back another time. I know that we did a million things today, but hopefully you can watch the chapters, find something that is relevant to you, and stick around because right after this, if you're watching the live stream, I'll be back with my friend Francisco Siller. We are going to be doing some photography, which is going to be really cool, and maybe even some time-lapsing. So stick around. He is absolutely freaking amazing. I'm going to have such a great time coming out with us. It's going to be wild. Stick around and I'll see you in a few minutes. Bye.